Hi there, I'm Margie Holmes, clinical psychologist, author, and educator. Today we begin part 2 of last week's episode and I'll be answering your questions on male orgasm. A question from @WowKurtMaurice. How come merong matagal labasan? Yung iba, mabilis naman. What's the secret of a prolonged orgasm? I could be facetious and say, swerte ang matagal labasan, malas ang mabilis. But actually, I'm sorry, I'm just wanting to be funny because it isn't any joke if you're mabilis labasan and this upsets you and or your partner. But here are some reasons why you may be this way. Okay, first of all, there's the psychoanalytic reason that the reason you're mabilis labasan is because you have a hatred towards your mother and therefore a hatred towards all women. So what you do kung mabilis kang labasan, parang hindi mo kasalanan, ano? So parang it's very passive-aggressive kasi kahit nga ngit-ngit sa galit ang girlfriend mo, wala siyang pwedeng sabihin kasi parang, honey, it's not under my control, okay? But this, as you can see, is very Freudian. When you talk about mother, childhood, this is very Freudian, and a lot of other theories and research has shown that there are two other reasons that someone may come quite quickly. One is behavioral. Our first sexual experience usually has a mark on how our future sexual experiences will be. And that is why I hope many of us, or most of us, or all of us, have really lovely first sexual experiences. Having said that, it doesn't mean that if you have a bad one, that this will mark you for life. It's just that perhaps you need to be more conscious about what happened in the past that was not so nice so that it will be easier to overcome. Okay, so the behavioral reason for premature ejaculation is that one learned how to be a premature ejaculator and that carries on. For example, most young Filipino men usually have their first sexual experience either with a prostitute or with your girlfriend. And usually if it's a prostitute, you can't afford those high-class call girls that can stay with you all night, etc., etc. Usually you get someone who needs volume trade. So if your first sexual experience is with a woman who wants you to come quickly, usually she has ways of doing that, but it doesn't change the fact that this was your first sexual experience. You learned that good sex has to do with coming fast, and this is a reason for it. Now, the other reason research has shown is that it could be something physical. Okay? And one of the reasons they say this is, and don't ask me how they concluded this, but the research seemed to be methodologically sound, is that they said apparently premature ejaculation runs in families. So I cannot imagine how they got this fact, but they did, and that is why they think if it runs in families, there must be a genetic or there must be a physical or biological component to it. One thing I would just like to say is, sometimes women think if they have been away from their partners a long time, one kind of hopes that he comes very quickly that first time because it is a clue that he hasn't slept with other women. Although that is not necessarily the truth, right? I mean, because sometimes even you can come and take a long time, but it's because you've masturbated and not because you've slept with other women. Okay, @AngelReality asks, what do I do if my boyfriend's pistol does not stand anymore after a round? Somehow it will stand, but it can't last long. Any advice? Now, @AngelReality, unless you know the cause, you can't provide an answer, and therefore neither can I. Usually, if a man's penis behaves this way and he cannot do the same things at 64 that he did at 22, this would be a problem. Though frankly, if you call his penis a pistol, I pretty much presume that you at least are very, very much younger than 64. Though admittedly, he could be that old, but somehow I don't feel this. Okay, so a reason this could be the case would be stress, would be fatigue, would be a dip in libido. No, so again, the usual thing is to talk and try to find out if anything else is going on. Okay, and sana if you could focus on quality and not quantity. Do you need this because you need it to enjoy sex, or simply to prove to yourself that he really loves you, and that's why his penis is always hard, you know. Sometimes media has a lot to do to increasing your expectations. And it's no fun for a guy if he senses that you're not happy with how his penis gets erect, if he senses that you feel shortchanged. So, if you can talk about things, it would be good. And also, please remember that his penis is not under voluntary control. He cannot look at it and say, if you're good, I'm going to give you, what can you give a penis? I don't know. I can give you another workout tonight. Even if the penis, presuming he's sort of human, likes the idea, he cannot do it because the penis is as I say, cannot behave voluntarily. It is what it is, it does what it does. However, the good news is, one's tongue, one's fingers, even one's voice, is under voluntary control. So there are still other ways he can make you enjoy. Okay? A question from @Macdenso. What's a woman got to do if the man is about to ejaculate and you want to pleasure him more? Actually, my feeling is if he's about to ejaculate, there's a hell of a lot of pleasure in that already. However, if you want to extend this pleasure, I guess one way is a stop-start technique. He's about to come and then he stops. And then he's about to come and then he stops. I mean, that can be pretty terrific. And if you want to do that, the squeeze technique is one of the best ways to do it. Okay? Now, if you also feel that after he does this, you want him to get an erection right away after he ejaculates, sometimes it's not possible, and that has to do with age. The period between your last ejaculation and your next erection is called the refractory period. And the refractory period takes longer and longer as you get older. And, again, remember that his penis is not under his voluntary control. And I think remembering this, then you can feel that it's not personal that he isn't getting erect. Okay? So, from MG, who asks, my partner and I are having difficulty in sex. Everything was perfect, but he couldn't come. It took us more or less 3 hours of sex before he finally came. This is our first time having sex, but we had different partners in the past. Can you give me advice? I want to make love to him again, but it's frustrating that it took so long to come. Nakakababa ng self-esteem. I can understand perfectly what you mean, but I think it is good to find out if it is only with you that he cannot come more quickly, or if it's also with other women. Because if it is also with other women, then this is very, very clear that it has nothing to do with you. So, parang walang personalan. Ganyan talaga siya. Anong magagawa natin? However, even if it only has to do with you. Because if you ask the guy and you're not that close, he may say, it's only with you, and that may not necessarily be true. But even if it's true, it is possible that that's the reason, and that will be the most common cause is medication. Okay? I mean, it can be stress, it can be age, it can be fear of the vagina, or fear of making her pregnant, and therefore, you don't want to ejaculate inside her. But in my clinical experience, retarded ejaculation, which is what this is called, usually medication is a problem. For example, some antidepressants can keep you from ejaculating. Okay? What else was I going to say? Oh, that's about all. Okay? Oh, yes. Retarded ejaculation is the third most common problem that men have. Depending on the therapist you talk to, this is the jury is out. In my clinical experience, premature ejaculation is the most common. Then there is erectile difficulties, and then there is retarded ejaculation. Though retarded ejaculation happens so much more seldom than the first two. Okay? Okay, JB has a 3-part question. Health-related ba kung gaano kabilis o kaikli ang iyong orgasm? Hindi, JB. As far as I know, as far as the research I've seen, hindi ito health-related. As we said, it could be because mainly of something that you learned, therefore behavioral, or it could be something that is genetic. But it has nothing to do with your getting diabetes later on in life or a stroke, etc. At least so far, the research hasn't shown that. Okay? Kung hindi po iyon ma-achieve, ibig po bang sabihin ay di na po healthy ang isang tao? Hindi yun ibig sabihin. Pwedeng hindi mo ma-achieve ang klaseng or ejaculation na gusto mo, pero pwedeng healthy ka pa. So I hope you don't have to worry. May iba-iba pa pong anyo ng orgasm. Yes, as far as I can remember, as far as I think will be important to our listeners, there are two. There is what is called a dry orgasm or retrograde ejaculation. And then, most interesting, I think, to a lot of men, especially older men, is orgasm without ejaculating. And I shall talk more about that with a later question. Okay? An anonymous viewer emails, I can only get an orgasm if I have a fetish of dominating someone. I never get excited if there's no role-playing or wearing something such as nurse, being a nurse, wearing all latex, etc. But I'm not a fan of regular sex. Sometimes I just fake my orgasms with my partner. Is this a mental sickness? Not necessarily. It becomes a mental disorder if you are so upset about it that you can no longer function in life, which means that a mental disorder has to do, as I say, with your view of yourself and your view of your problem or supposed problem. It also has to do with whether you hurt another person in the situation or yourself. So in terms of the fetish, if you like to wear latex and rubber, who is it hurting? He'll still get his salary every month. Women will still like him, etc., etc. So I think what you have to focus on is, can you orgasm without it? In the past, a fetish was something that you needed before you could have sex. But now, what is really a problem is paraphilias. And paraphilias means you really have a problem with it in that it affects your life. But if it's just a fetish that you really love to wear latex, or maybe you and your partner wear latex, it's double the fun. And that's fairly easy enough to get. This is not a mental problem at all. It may be a logistical challenge, but it is not a mental disorder. Okay? KH says, I'm worried because I masturbated 11 times last week, but my organ does not get hard for a sustained period of time. Can I do something about it? The first question I have to ask you is, did your organ not get hard simply because you masturbated? Meaning at other times you had a very hard erection, and now because you masturbated 11 times, you did not get it? My feeling is that's not the case, because masturbating is what is called a self-regulating mechanism. You masturbate because you want to. Never have I heard of anyone who forces himself to masturbate if he doesn't want to. Okay? So I think the second question you ask, if you're still worried that it's tied up, you ask yourself, can I get hard erections any other way, like when I wake up in the morning or when I watch a porn flick? And if you cannot, then obviously this is a problem that is physical, because this helps when you know that it is what is called global. It happens under any situation. Okay? But if it happens only when you masturbate and not at other times, that is a clue that it might be psychological, because you feel guilty about masturbation, etc. So, if it's psychological, there is something you can do about it. And actually, if it's physical, there is also something you can do about it. It's just a matter of getting the right help. Okay? From JK, I used to come with prolonged orgasm when I masturbated in my early 20s and when I did Kegel exercises after the ejaculation. For men, it would be the squeeze. But lately, I can't seem to have that kind of orgasm anymore. Sometimes I just ejaculate without feeling anything like that anymore. Is there any possible way I can elevate this sensation with my orgasm again? I sure hope so, okay? And again, the bigger question is, Do you always feel that way, that when you ejaculate, you no longer get pleasure? Because this is where the problem is. If it happens only occasionally, if it happens only when you sleep with woman X and not woman Y, then I would suggest don't sleep with woman X, okay? But if it happens all the time, I would suggest go to someone for help. The first person I would suggest is a urologist, because if it happens all the time, this seems like a physical problem. Age may also have something to do with it, but your urologist will be the person to help you. Okay? MY asks, are there any ways to achieve a dry orgasm? Can I climax with just ejaculation? I'm just curious and I want to have one. Well, I'm so happy that you're a curious person and that you enjoy experimenting. However, if I may suggest something, perhaps, trying to get a dry orgasm is not the point. It's not a good thing to aspire for, because generally, this is called a dry cum. It's called retrograde ejaculation, meaning you feel orgasm, you feel the pleasure, you feel the release, but nothing comes out of your penis. And usually people who have this are men who have operations with their prostate, no? So frankly, it seems like a lot to undergo just to try this experience. What might be better for you is the other, about ejaculating and not necessarily coming, or more to the point, coming but not necessarily ejaculating. Now, there is a very, very old philosophy in Taoism actually, and it's called the Tao of Love and Sex. And one of its basic tenets is that you can have an orgasm, you can come, and yet not ejaculate. And in fact, this is what the Tao of Love and Sex wants you to do, especially as you get to be older, because generally, although I'm sure there are many exceptions, generally when you get older, it is much harder to come and then relax and then come again. Generally, when you get older, your refractory period is much longer. So, in the Tao of Love and Sex, if you don't ejaculate, therefore you don't have a refractory period. Therefore, you will be more likely to want to have sex with your partner again. Hindi ba masaya? Lalo na kung matanda na kayo. Okay? So, I guess what I want to say is, although age affects men and women in many ways, and research shows that age affects men more when it comes to the physiological manifestations of sexual manifestations, no? For example, when men thrust, usually it's much further when you're younger, up until 6 inches, natalsik. Or rather than when you're older, what they described it, Dr. Helen Singer Kaplan of the Sex Therapy Clinic in Cornell described it as a mere seepage. And as we said, the refractory period is much longer, etc. But age can also be a wonderful thing. As Robert Browning said, "Come grow old with me, the best is yet to be." Okay, so however, before you grow old, I think it is important to live life now and to live life or look forward to life in the future. And please remember, guys, that life, or even the life of your penis, is not a competition, no? It is not whether his penis is bigger than yours or smaller, whether he ejaculates much more quickly than you do, or whether, as I say, he squirts at a much bigger distance than you. These are not important. And also remember, as we said earlier, that ejaculation and orgasm are two very different things. Thanks for watching today's private session. For a future episode, I'll answer your questions on breaking up. What's the best way to break up with someone? How do you cope when someone breaks up with you, especially if you love him or her very, very much? Send me your questions on Facebook, tweet using the hashtag AskMargie, or send an email to askmargie@rappler.com. We also encourage video questions. Be bold. Send us a link to your next video. See you next week.